the idea of spirituality comes through the alchemy of loving or caring for another human being. Oftentimes we see it as a significant partner or something like this, but actually a deep caring for another human being is also a kind of guru worship in a certain mild way, where you just feel you are so caring about the other person that you're not worried about your personal pathology. You're not trying to enhance your personal pathology.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute, located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge shared through authentic, heartfelt communication will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. I'm honored to have our guest today, Craig Perkins, who is the co-founder of the Yandara Yoga Institute. Craig is an experienced yoga teacher with over 15,000 hours of teaching under his belt. He attended his first yoga teacher training in 1968 and has been studying yoga and other disciplines such as Chinese yoga, Tai Chi, and Qigong ever since. He has studied many different styles of yoga and meditation and has studied with many great teachers, as well as being the author or co-author of the book, A Philosophy and Guide for the Intuitive Yoga Teacher, which I have here, which is a really beautiful book about being a yoga teacher from the place of intention and moving from the heart and from the energetics of yoga as a practice and being a teacher and guiding your students in that. So welcome to the podcast, Craig.
Thank you for having me.
So I would like to start just with that, with what, in your eyes, what is an intuitive yoga teacher?
Well, I think we all have a sense of knowingness within us, and it is the association with the body and its wisdom that differentiates between the wisdom of the brain. I think intuition comes from the body. Mm-hmm. To understand that we are this adamantine or really incredibly being, this body. We often think of the analogy is the body is the same as a car. It's like the driver of the car is the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. As a car, you are driving the car, and the car is an inanimate object, and the driver is driving the car.
Right.
Whereas it is the body, it is this vehicle that is who we are rather than the brain. And I think it's hard for people to grasp that because no one ever told them that. Mm-hmm. Or they know that, they know how they feel. You don't feel up here,
right,
oh my God, I'm just so in love.
Right.
So, it's funny how we just haven't been to trust that. So it's not anything new or different in the sense that you just look at the world with your heart and with your body, and the eyes become an extension of the heart and the body, and you can see things that you don't necessarily normally see.
In the form of feeling.
The form of feelings, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. The form of feelings. And the feelings also become literally words or basically understanding. It's not just a feeling, but the out of the feeling comes a wisdom of words or poetry. Mm-hmm. This is where poetry comes from. It doesn't come from up here.
Right.
So it's very practical. Not just, I have a feeling. It's like the feelings would manifest into actually words, just like the brain does in a certain way too.
Yeah. So how do you relate to this notion that we are not our feelings? You know, you've heard it, I've heard it a lot in terms of not defining ourselves as the feelings that we have and just letting them pass through us.
Mhm.
How do you relate to that?
Well, I think it's your interpretation of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is feelings like emotional thoughts? I don't know, how that could, it's a sort of a complicated world in there, in the sense of, like, so many things we see as sensations, or, is it a sensation? Is it a feeling? Is it a thought pattern? Is it a thought pattern is related to a feeling? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know how to answer that particularly, but I think one of the elements of yoga is to find within yourself the answer to that very question.
Mm.
What is real, in a sense? Is a feeling just a passing thing? Thoughts seem to be passing. I think that a little experiment one can do sometime is close their eyes and see if they can find thoughts.
Yeah.
It's that fascinating. You look around, you close your eyes and you look around and you try and find the source of thoughts, or thoughts themselves. And all of a sudden they don't exist,
Mm. Yeah.
So it is interesting to be able to, I think it's a good question, because it's hard to answer, in a sense, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's real? What is real? Are feelings real? Are sensations real? And I think this journey of yoga brings us to a place of knowingness around that very answer. I can say verbally, in words, the answer to the question, but I think more if it is an experience,
Mm-hmm.
differentiating between a real experience and just passing emotions or passing thoughts or something like this.
Yeah. So what role did intuition play in you guiding your life since maybe that first teacher training you took many years ago, and in arriving to this place, deciding to open this center, and before and after that?
Well, I remember I was just coming out of high school, and life was a certain dimension of things. Like, we had dances occasionally, we had ski club, we had, you know, everything that we normally do in school. And it seemed uh, like all there was. It
Mm-hmm.
just, this is what happens. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but you just experiencing things on a certain level, and we think that's all there is, and it's real. We sometimes feel really good when we're skiing or some kind of sports, in a marathon or something, and we have different feelings of enjoyment. Um, but then when I met my first teacher, Ananda Bhavanani, something happened where I felt all of a sudden something more, and it was uplifting, and it was kind of magical, and it was something that felt more real. And that was what I got involved in yoga. I noticed there's something inexplicable. And again, it's hard to put into words. We can talk
Yeah.
about all we want, but it's an experience.
Yes.
So that's what brought that about. And I had sort of around that time various inner experiences, also of a very near death type quality, where I saw some things internally and experienced some things internally that were mind blowing, very entering another dimension of meditation, things like this. They only lasted a short period of time, and they didn't stick with me. It's like,
Mm.
but I did have, at that age, I guess I was 17, I had some understanding of what they were talking about when they were talking about meditation and spiritual experiences like this. So it felt like, well, this is obvious where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I I went to college, just audited, and I just checked it out for a few weeks until the professor kicked me out for not paying. And I was I just showed up.
Oh, as one does.
Yeah, I even showed up for those little tutorials. I wanted to see what university was like. I was also, for a brief time looking into becoming into a priest. What do you call it?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, father, I guess. I don't
Well,
know. I don't know. I'm Jewish.
yeah, I don't know. I can't recall it. Well, that was just, an I mean, I found that Christianity and yoga at some points had some real melding together, or spirituality in general. I mean,
yeah,
including Judaism, where I studied Orthodox Judaism, and
really?
my girlfriend was almost Orthodox, but I was not Jewish, so I was that didn't last long. But I saw, friends. I was really impressed with the what do you call it? What's the Jewish Bible?
The Torah.
The Torah or Quran?
Yeah.
The Torah. Yeah.
Torah. Yeah.
What is another word for? It's another word. It's Torah.
Bible.
Yeah, Bible.
Quran.
Anyway.
Quran is the Muslim Bible.
Yeah. I got that straightened out. It's all the same somewhere in the universe.
Exactly.
Anyways, yeah. So that was just a time of trying to discover what it's going to be, and it felt like I got the most experience out of yoga. And then I went to India on a, I had heard about a spiritual teacher there. So I went to India. I think it was about 18 or 19, and spent a month and a half there. And with Kirpal Singh, and that was really, I guess, a life-changing experience to see somebody who is such a manifestation of internal wisdom and kindness and upliftment, and how he could, just by in his radiation, would be affected by that. And so that also changed my life about what life is really about. Because, we go to school and we go to college and we get a job and we get in debt and we die. And, as sometimes we think, well, what's more? Sometimes we have these our goals, like I'm going to be happy when I graduate. I'm going to be happy when I have kids.
Right.
And, the whole future.
Yeah, I'll be happy when.
I'll be happy when. And so anyway, it was just nice that I ended up being in those circumstances. And in Vancouver at that time, there was a great influx of spiritual teachers, Tibetan, Chinese, Hindu. And so it was a time of, really discovery. And then I opened up a yoga studio. I think it was 19. And did yoga, did weekend retreats, did summer retreats, did classes, and quite a large number of people would come to the class, and I had 50 people in my class. And it did seem like a meaningful way of life. So that, and ever since then, I have lived in ashrams and meditation centers pretty much the whole time, including here.
Yep, you created your own little. Not so little, but yeah.
Yeah. So the intuition, I guess, is just I wouldn't call it intuition necessarily. I would just call it something that really felt good. It felt meaningful. It felt uplifting. It felt magical as compared to, something else. It was like life became like a color TV instead of black and white. You're in black and white TV. I can remember when that came out, black color and black and white. And actually it was incredible dimension, and so it's hard to describe, but it is just, you feel better. I would say, even intuition is just a certain knowingness and a certain, there's a certain quality there. Like even when I was talking about observing somebody in a yoga pose, and you can feel what's going on there rather than just mentally saying, oh, you should do, you're not aligned properly. It's more like, well, it feels like there's something there that's not working for you. It feels to me like that's not working. Let's try something else. And it feels better.
Yeah.
It feels better to them. It feels better. And even talking on that level feels better. I think poetry feels better than prose oftentimes, you know? So again, I don't know if you can call it intuition. I call it life.
Yeah, following what feels good to you.
Following what feels good.
Yeah.
And even refining that where you can see somebody or see something and realize that that's not an ideal way to go. You do get like, I don't like to use the word feeling necessarily because it could mean so many different things, but you just get a feeling that this isn't right, and trusting that feeling, like you know,
kind of a sense in the
sense.
body. Yeah.
A sense is the same thing. It's like you can
Right.
tell when your child is lying to you. You know, you can tell when people are not being straight with you, no matter how you can be convinced in your head, but it's something else, a certain knowingness can take over.
Beautiful. And you mentioned something very interesting there about your teacher, Kirpal Singh, that it was just his being that was affecting you personally, and I'm sure the rest of his students. And you spoke about that in the book as well, that as a yoga teacher, what we really are transmuting to the people in the room is the quality of energy that we have, not necessarily how to do a pose in a certain way or another.
Yeah. That is the foundation of yoga. There was a 90-year-old yogi, and he hadn't eaten in 3 years. He became a breatharian. He was so really so magical. It was really a beautiful person. And, you know, there was, and I like this about a lot of the teachers, is there's no teaching. You just sat near him. And you become uplifted. It's palpable, you know. You have an experience. Their radiant body, their EMF field, you might say, on a real mundane level. But there was something there where you just felt beautiful just being around them, and there was nothing else needed to be done. Just be around them. And there's certainly lifestyle and practices to do, but that was basically it.
Yeah. Is there a way that you kind of transfer that to the students that come through here in terms of how you would love for them to be a teacher?
I think it's the foundation of the entire Yandara teacher training is to get people to feel instead of think. From I say from thinking to feeling, from fear to love, from head to heart is the journey, and different ways to get there. I mean, just simply exercising and moving your body, move your attention to your body, and to recognize that the body is the source of it. You know, we always think of the head. No, the head's, no, it's the whole body has wisdom. Fingertips have wisdom. More than we can imagine.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, there's, you know, like we can anyway, it's just like there's adamantine. You know, like you're an I don't know, adamantine, or is a crystal or something, like crystal clear or something, that we can listen to music through our hands. We can, you know, feel things through every part of our body. You know, we can experience life in a more dimensional way in terms of just, I don't know, it's a little waxing out there, getting a bit crazy, but I just think it's beautiful. And I mean, like you're trying to, I think something that's hard to talk about people, because love means so many different things, so many different people. Right. Sometimes it's like almost a 4-letter word, you know, in terms of, but how do you feel when you're feeling you're in love? You know,
it's hard to put into words. You're right.
It's a whole body experience.
Right.
It's not just in our heads or something. You know, it's so amazing that, you know, the story is that this woman, you know, is at work, and then she goes on a date and she falls in love, and opens and loves or rises in love, whatever terminology you're going to be.
Mm.
And then she comes to work the next day. And that effect of that date and her openness to whatever we're going to call that, something that happens to people when the alchemy is right between people, it's palpable.
Right.
You can feel it the next day. I mean, you look at their body, you can see it's radiant. I mean, everything's like that. And so that's, that's the whole body experience. That is, I think that really quantifies that, is that you feel it.
So what have been some practices that you've used over the years to go from the mind, the head, to the body, to the sensing?
Well, one thing is just very practical. It's just put your attention in your body. I mean, we put all our attention up here.
Right.
I mean, one simple thing is to just, if it's available to you, to feel the sensations in your chest. We feel things in different chakra centers. But the heart appears to be the strongest chakra in my mind, in terms of guiding us, in terms of it being, this is where we feel love. This is where we feel that magical upliftment. And by actually just simply putting our attention there, it's ridiculously simple.
Yeah.
That's one thing that can really work for people. And once you have become, some people can't even feel their body, the sensations in their body. So, you've got to get people to feel their body. That's one of the things that yoga does, gets us into our bodies. Some people are so analgesic or so dissociated by being on computers all day long, they can't even have a sensation in their body. They're so in another world, a sort of dream world.
I think in a way that we are kind of blocking the sensations, because there are feelings that we like and feelings that we really don't like. And then in order to avoid the ones we don't like, we kind of block the whole sensation and then we miss both parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, there's so much to go into around that.
Yeah.
But also just being around people of good energy is also a very good practice. I mean, satsang that's the path that I have been on most of my life, is following or being around people who were uplifting, call it these gurus who, were just extraordinary. And in their association, you pick up on that. That's because you got to find a good guru, or a good, beautiful person to be associated with. And that's sometimes difficult to find, but I don't think it's dependent on the outside. It's just on someone to bring around. I like that. It's helpful to have inspiration and to have that effect. But again, just feeling your body, just feeling your heart, and you can just melt into that. You can just become the body, become the heart, and something overtakes you.
And what does it mean for you to move in life? Maybe this is similar to the question I had about intuition, but to move through life from a heart space.
Well, you start to make decisions on feelings. You start to, I tell people, little guidance, practical guidance is, say you're making a decision about a partner, okay? And you're not sure, about them. I would say, here's the thing, separate for 2 or 3 days, okay? So otherwise you're not too mixed up with them energetically. Then go to a restaurant or something and sit down and make sure you can see the door. Get there early. Sounds crazy. Then when the person walks through the door, whatever circumstance would be, so you can be about 15, 20 feet away, trust the feeling you get from them. Once they start talking, it's confusing. But I think that love at first sight thing, although it's kind of, sort of a trite kind of a comment, is there is something to that. If you are in your body and you're observing, and, you're sensitive, you're present, then you can pick up on things. And that is true of where you're going to live, what job you're going to choose. Things like that can be very practical. You make your decisions based on, actually experiencing these things.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, yandara.com, to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode. You brought a very interesting point, I think, because it can be very confusing. We have, it can be confusing to really notice if what we're feeling is from the ego and what we think we should be doing, rather than actually what the body is telling us as the guidance from within.
Yeah.
And you because you kind of said that once the person starts talking, then I think that's what you meant, that it becomes confusing where the information is coming from, the ego or the heart.
Right.
And before they start talking, would you say that's kind of like the first reaction is kind of the intuition?
Yes. But also, I think it's an interesting journey because, like, for instance, you can see somebody and they can remind you of your father who beat you when you were 3 and had, black hair and wore a leather jacket. And if somebody comes in with a leather jacket and has dark hair, that's not intuition. That's a trigger of a past, trauma, that is basically from the amygdala kind of thing, that the amygdala is guiding us towards anything that might be dangerous.
Yeah,
so it is
survival.
There's no question that it is there's nothing simple about it, but this is why we do practice all the limbs of yoga. This is what we do. We just can't start somebody come off the street and has been business person and all day long working on a computer and say, oh, here's the answer.
Yeah.
No, I think it takes time and practice to find the right environment to allow that to occur. This is Yandara here. It's nature. It's one of the fundamental elements. Nature is essential ingredient, I believe, in doing just that.
Yeah.
So there's many different parts to that. And actually at Yandara here, we try to introduce maybe about 8 or 9 different solid practices that help us to do exactly what we're saying, is that you are be able to guide your life into those things that work, the situations that work, the jobs that work, the people that work, and to use that to move through life.
Yes. So letting the guidance of your life, the different choices, because what you mentioned are very critical choices, right? The choice of what we choose as a profession, what we choose, who we choose as a partner, where we choose to live. These are very big decisions with very real consequences on how our life looks like. So really letting the guidance come from within, and I guess that kind of relates to me to our dharma, right? Our path in this world and living with purpose. So do you feel like you know what your purpose is in life?
Well, generally, it feels like, well, because I had that near-death experience, and it created in me an understanding of what's possible for a human being. And so there's an overall understanding that there are things that we can do to bring ourselves to that uplifted state. And even more so, just being around, the purpose of when being around people these guides, these gurus, and many different been around. Maybe I would say 8 or 10 really enlightened beings to some greater or lesser degree, but really pure loving beings, not ego maniac gurus that have substance of humility and substance and things. And so to do things that would bring myself into that state, would be some kind of purpose.
Mm-hmm. And do you see that as your personal purpose or also in how you relate to the world?
Well, both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think everything we do here is endeavoring to bring out those qualities in each of us, and so that we can. I mean, there's an element of service around this in the sense that the world's not doing so good. I mean, you hear about suicide rate from going up for young children, young teenagers, and just this terrible thing. And so there is a sense of finding ways to bring about some sort of at least not suicidal, not depressed, not miserable, to have trained people to go out and teach yoga. And I think yoga is on different levels. I mean, it means a lot of different things, different people, but it's highest level, it can be really beautiful to start people on a journey towards finding fulfillment or at least not being depressed.
Yeah. What is something that you've changed your mind about in terms of your perception of spirituality and yoga?
Well, I'm really a guru worshiper, okay? But I guess what's changed because the main teachers that I have had died, and there didn't seem to be anyone else around, that I said, well, I have to probably do some things more on my own, which I probably should have always. I think it's really, really good to appreciate and hang out with really spiritual people, but sometimes to give up everything. I mean, in some ways, you want to give up everything. I'm just saying, it's very hard to explain this, but you don't want to give up your own practice and just be a zombie for the Lord or something. You want to you want to take responsibility for who you are. Also, I think two of them can relate totally in terms of being with somebody like that, and also just not getting lost in, oh my God, but doing practice as well as just because there's a whole side of bhakti yoga that is pure devotion. Just it's just pure devotion to the guru, and I think it is substantial in terms of the practice. It's to me, when you think of Paramahansa Yogananda, what a beautiful saint he was, and you look at his life, and I think it was his basic love affair with Sri Yukteswar, his guru. I mean, a beautiful paternal, a beautiful relationship of devotion and caring on both sides that opens our hearts. I kind of, I mean, I kind of feel like there's the idea of spirituality comes through the alchemy of loving or caring for another human being. Oftentimes we see it as a significant partner or something like this, but actually a deep caring for another human being is also a kind of guru worship in a certain wild way, where you just feel you are so caring about the other person that you're not worried about your personal pathology. You're not trying to enhance your personal pathology. I always say the thing, I'm not trying to make Craig feel better. I'm trying to let go of Craig. And sometimes that comes about of just caring for somebody, being in love with somebody. So, it's like classic thing to say, but God is love, and the way back to God is through love. And even though it's a funny word, which confuses us perhaps, there's something there. But it is talking about another,
Right.
caring for the other.
Yeah.
Not slavery or servitude, but just out of abundance of heart. And that is service, is a purifying of the heart, purifying of the soul is a foundational piece of the mystic path and leading to, I don't know, a lot to go into.
Yeah. I think there's it's a lot about letting go of my own sense of self and seeing myself as separate than somebody else, and changing into this perspective of we're all in this together in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's there.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think you have to be discriminating about who you open up to, though. I think we do have to exercise some discrimination. I'm feeling you can't just, I mean, if you're Mother Teresa or some saint or something, love everybody, but I think you have to I think one of the key things is you have to find somebody who is not going to bring you down. If they're on drugs or alcohol or have some history of violence or psychotic or something, I mean, it's extreme, but you don't want to open up to that. I mean, I know it's weird to say that, but I think you need to be so that when you open up, that you're not brought down.
Yeah.
And initially, most of us are not strong enough. We're trying to affect other people by love, and they end up affecting us by anger and hostility and what they're on. So it's sort of like, oh, that didn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a socially, politically incorrect way of seeing things, but I think it's reality. You have to be somewhat discriminating about who you open up to.
Yes. I would love to go into that a little bit. I do want to be conscious of the words that I use, because I think that it's there's a fine line here, because there are people who are in our life, and they just are in our life. There is not we don't necessarily want to change that, but they might be going through a hard time. They might be going through like a dark night of the soul, something that's temporary, or it might be something that is more long lasting. And where do you see the role in being compassionate towards that person and doing something kind of selflessly just because you know that it's going to help them, rather than protecting ourselves?
Yeah. I think that this all comes back to the original questions about the intuition. You can feel, you can sense when you're wasting your time. I mean, it's not the terrible thing to say, but you can see that somebody, I mean, to use an extreme example, if you see somebody who's drunk and they're explosively angry and they're completely out of it, and you think you're going to do something to help them out, that's delusional in that particular moment.
Yeah.
And yet you're aware that just because somebody's going through a difficult time emotionally or something, it doesn't mean you can't be open to them. But I don't know the exact medical terminology for this, but when there's different phases of mental illness, and there is, I can't remember the expression, borderline personality disorders, which I call sort of a difficult thing to get out of, whereas a behavioral disorder, where I work with somebody, because it's just a behavioral disorder. There's some terminologies. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. It's something I know about innately, is that some people just have a little too much going on. There's nervous system damage. There's things that have happened to them that it's going to be very difficult for them to get through.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we're going off in this tangent too much, but it is important. You just get a feeling where that person is. It's fascinating because they could be, upset or angry for a period of time. And you say, oh no, this person's bad vibes. Well, no, they're just going through something.
Yeah.
And other people have just a very difficult energy field that's probably not going to be too healthy to be around.
So using our intuition in terms of,
noticing
where can we help and where can't we?
Yes.
Or where we can't.
Yeah.
Amazing. I would love to talk also about, again, our role in society and in our community. And you spoke in the book about kind of getting feedback from you. You talked about it in the context of training and your fellow students, but I think we can also think about it in terms of just getting feedback from our surroundings and using that to build awareness. And you also spoke about this kind of fear that we have, fear of greatness and fear of weakness, in terms of we don't really allow ourselves to say, yeah, I'm actually good at that, or I'm not so good at that, and the fear that we have around that. So
Right.
could you talk about that, please?
Well, I think that for some reason or another, as society, as our education system and social conditioning and advertising have caused us to lose a sense of who we really are. And uh, so it's really difficult because the guidelines of our lives, what we've been observing all day long in terms of TV shows and advertisements and things like this, have influenced in such a way we don't even know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that which we are told is important perhaps isn't so much.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is indigenous people, like Frey, without being influenced by a lot, would have a natural sense, like in teenagers, and they're growing up, they have a sense of like self-worth.
Right.
And
Children
what?
Children have that
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, I'm great, and be
Yeah.
encouraged to say, yes, I have these great qualities.
Yeah.
And yet somehow we're told, well, no, you should suppress that. You should.
Yeah, you're full of yourself.
Yeah, it's full of yourself.
Yeah.
And it is a confusing dimension of things. I mean, you're pompous and egotistical, but there's this balance of saying, yeah, I'm really powerful and I really have beautiful things to share, without that, like building yourself up because you have low self-worth by telling people how great you are. It's just a matter of saying, hey, I understand what I've got.
Yeah.
And so the idea is people think you're pompous if you ever say, I'm really good at something, and you're afraid they're going to judge you and dismiss you because you've said how great you are, when actually it should just say, yeah, that's great. This is what they're good at.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the same thing is when we are afraid to show our weaknesses a lot, that people will judge us. People will think, oh my God, what a loser that guy is. I'm not going to be around him, and instead of, and just saying, yeah, I have my strengths and challenges. I have, and this is who I am, rather than a statement, rather than just afraid of either one of those. Stating our challenges or weaknesses actually exposes us, or we can relate to humanness.
Right.
So people on both sides say, wow, he's a human being with things, and he also has these other great qualities. This is who he is. Instead of this fear body of in the middle, worried about going either side of everything.
Yeah, I saw it today somewhere about that we kind of are in a place where we feel like we need to heal our humanity. Like we're running away from being human, which means that we have things that we're good at and things that we're not so good at. Right. And I think there's also this kind of notion that we're always trying to make ourselves better, which is a good thing in my opinion. But I think there's also a very fine line there in terms of where does acceptance of who we are come in, and where does it become, like I'm always trying to better myself to the place that I'm already losing, that I'm good just the way I am.
Yeah, that's good enough. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. But, to me, that moves into the solution, I think, is that's a psychological concept within ourselves. And that is like psychotherapy or personal psychotherapy and stuff like this, which definitely yoga merges into. Actually, physical yoga practice and meditation is an answer to that, to find out we don't base our lives on emotional stability. We don't necessarily base our lives on the swinging of emotions that you think, oh, good, bad. It's more like there's another place that we can be where we don't worry about either of those things. We're not affected by that. It's not like a sort of a fear-based solution. We're just sort of a knowingness that allows us to be in balance.
So again, coming back to the sensations of actually who we are, not our mind and just our being.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Psychotherapy is really a lot involved in the mind. And it's certainly super valuable, but at some point, I just remember Soblowski's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, the textbook for psychologists, and he was basically saying, hey, exercise and meditation is a solution, not necessarily going to therapy the rest of your life.
Yeah. Beautiful. What's your favorite and, in your opinion, most important part of the teacher training here?
Well, the most valuable part is I think the more like the group therapy sessions, the satsa sessions, where people get a chance to find out who they are and vocalize it. It is definitely emerging on sort of psychotherapy, group therapy.
Could you explain a little bit how that process looks like?
Well, I mean, it is one of the yamas, second yamas is truthfulness. And it's a foundation piece of the yogic path. What is truthfulness? Is it just not telling lies? Right. No, it's actually, I think, translates into a certain Raja Yoga or a knowingness. I mean, who we really are, the truth of who we are, and getting rid of those veils, the koshas or something, the veils, and really saying, this is who I am, and exploring this is who I am from a verbal point of view. So we don't.
So just to explain to somebody who doesn't really know how it looks, we sit in a circle, the whole group, after building trust with each other and with the teacher, and each person kind of shares in a very truthful way what they're going through, what they're experiencing,
and who they are.
Yeah. And it's not about kind of giving advice or helping them out because nobody's really trained. It's just for providing this safe, or other than the leader, it's just about providing this safe space that we're able to vocalize this truth.
Yes. Well, and just to clarify, yes, and it's not regressive therapy. It's not any particular modality. It's just basically being free to say what's going on with you,
which we don't have in a lot of our.
And we don't have like in a sort of environment. But also, just to clarify, that I am actually highly trained.
Yes.
No, it's important to say this because we're virgin. Because I don't suggest people do this. I believe you do need. I mean, I wouldn't suggest people who are doing yoga teacher trainings or working with people go into this, because you are becoming a psychotherapist. You are becoming a therapist, and you are going to open up things, and you need to be aware, particularly of having the experience of knowing when someone has a really serious problem and how to deal with that. Most of the time it's just fine. So I think a lot of the training has to do with being able to sort of energetically diagnose people and see if they are going to, they've just come here and gone off their medication and are not able to handle any kind of introspection of any kind. So I think, just to clarify, I have been trained a great deal on how to work with people on that level, although we don't go there, but we do have to have an understanding what to do in those cases when someone is having a serious condition.
So how do you see us taking that into our day-to-day life after a training?
Well, what you do is you endeavor to find somebody who you can trust to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is, and I think it's important to be able to find people or a person that you don't have to keep your fear body. You don't have to keep your personality, your tough girl, or tough guy.
Yeah, the
You know,
mask that we
the
put.
mask
Yeah.
that we wear.
Yeah.
The mask.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. What are you curious about right now?
Well, I'm curious how the world is going to unfold, you know? Like, I'm curious as to, like, I believe that when you reach a certain place of coherence or attunement, things happen to you, things fall into place in a really positive way. Not Murphy's Law.
Mm-hmm.
Murphy's Law in reverse. Whatever could go right will go right
Right.
because you're in a state of coherence.
Mm-hmm.
And to discover, I was wondering where some of this is heading. Whether what what the world is going to be happening, what Yandara will be what we'll be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and based on a real understanding, there's some guidance,
Mm-hmm.
not by some being, but by a certain energy, and so it's interesting to see how to be in tune with how that unfoldment is going to take place.
What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is some synchronistic things that happen to me, which go beyond the possibilities of, not just randomness, but I see things happening that are little experiences that occur that seem very synchronistic. There's obviously some power out there that's guiding something.
Yeah, that's so true. That gives me hope as well.
Yeah. I think that's what I feel.
Beautiful. Well, this has been very lovely for me. Thank you so much for doing this, Craig.
Okay.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.